Well, hello there. So, if you're new to our YouTube channel, this is a podcast called Beyond Belief Sobriety, and my name is John. And we are a podcast that explores secular options to recovery from addictions of all kinds. And we will have guests on. And today I have a guest. Her name is Barb. And she is here to share her personal story of recovery. And we will have a conversation flow from that. Barb, how you doing?
I am good. How are you, John?
I'm doing fantastic. I am off work tomorrow and I have a cup of coffee here and I'm talking to a friend in recovery. So, what more could I ask for? So,
Exactly.
so why don't we start with your story, if you don't mind? And what we'll do is you share your story. I might heckle you throughout and pepper you with some questions or
Sure.
throw my own experience out there at you. And before you know it, we'll just be talking.
That sounds good. Well, my story started, it seems like a long time ago now, as I'm getting older.
I
I
know.
was, yeah. um, I grew up in the Midwest, a small conservative Catholic home. I was adopted, so my parents wanted me, had all the financial resources, emotional, mental, spiritual. Um, I had it all growing up, a close knit extended family. And, so looking back, I can't say there was really any big trauma that would have caused me to want to escape. And I don't think life was really bad, but I went to the Catholic school. And when I went to high school, I decided I wasn't going to be the goody two shoes little Catholic schoolgirl. And so I changed that.
There you go.
Um, yeah, yeah. I kind of started, found the baddest boy in high school to be my boyfriend, and we went out drinking. And I did pretty well though. I had good grades and participated in a lot of extracurricular activities. It was a little different time then for the younger people
Yeah.
watching. Our drinking wasn't really, if you didn't get in trouble, nobody really said anything. Your parents kind of knew what you were doing, and it was okay.
It really was. I
Yeah,
remember my parents were like, just don't do drugs, but you can drink all you want.
right. That was kind of the and our my family, my parents used alcohol responsibly. That was part of all of their social gatherings. It was part of all of our family gatherings. Not that I didn't ever see anybody have a little bit too much, but they were responsible adults about it. And we were included in a lot of that. Sunday afternoon, the little beer joint down the road had a band, and you would go and get your Shirley Temples, and life was really good. And when I started drinking, I don't have that big one time I started drinking aha moment. It
Hmm.
just seemed like it was just part of what we did. Um, and there would be occasions that I would find that I could drink the most or did drink the most. I was always a lot of fun, so people always liked me to be around and be drinking. But you're exactly right about the drugs. I was um, very against drugs. And if you were my friend in high school and you were doing drugs, I would buy a 12 pack of beer and we'd go driving around on a Friday night and I would counsel you not to do drugs, you know? So who's got the problem, right?
Right.
Um, so I went to college. Well, I had a baby in high school, and I think that was it was a big turning point for me. I gave her up for adoption, and that was that first time I remember really like I don't fit in the world. I had this child and I'm going back to my senior year, and I just was completely, out of sorts with that. And I was praised for being a great thing to do, and but the attitude was, there, we didn't talk about it a lot. There wasn't, an offer of any kind of counseling after the initial counseling to place her for adoption. It was kind of like, well, that's over with now, get on with your life. So I think that kind of started, some of the things churning inside of me, and went off to college and broke up with a boyfriend, and um, ended up drinking my way really out of college when I could have gone, and my parents could have and would have paid for me to
Yep.
go anywhere. And I
I did
had the
that too.
intelligence to do that. I
Yeah.
whatever tests you take, I was could have been accepted anywhere. So
Hmm.
my life was really, it was almost like a golden road paved in front of me, but I couldn't see that. I couldn't just for some reason couldn't do that. Um, so I ended up getting back with the boyfriend and getting married, and having 3 kids. And I did not drink a lot during that time. I was, the good mom, and but I was just going crazy. I was absolutely just, insane. And there was some issues there. I mean, objectively looking back, there was some things that were wrong about us being together. My in-laws were probably as close to evil to me as I've ever experienced in my life. And so I have 3 little kids, and I decide with I think I made like $5 an hour, which was maybe a lot, but it wasn't very much even then. But I decided, oh, I'll be a single mom and I'll get rid of him, and that will solve all my problems. And the day he left, I bought a case of beer and sat proudly on my front steps with the neighbor and drank it. And that's, I remember my first sponsor telling me people get divorced every day, and that's not why
Mm.
we drink.
Mm.
And I was single for a couple years and found someone else that loved to drink like I love to drink. We had a lot of fun until we didn't.
Right.
It was fun, and then there was some problems, and then everything that was it was just a mess. We had a child. So my older kids kind of grew up the first half of their life with a pretty stable mom. And my youngest son, who was 9 when I came into recovery, his first years where he spent a lot of time sitting in a bar with us. And I had a terrible time talking about that for a long time, was really shameful about that. And, but, I got into AA. I called my mom, as I think a lot of good alcoholics do when they're down and out and the chips are down. And my dad had just had a stroke and was in a nursing home. It was a terrible time for all of us. And I just couldn't do it anymore. I just could not. And interestingly, I stopped going to the bar because I didn't want to sit in the bar with my son anymore. So, um, then the fighting became who has the problem, because
Mm.
my now ex-husband felt that if you drank at home, you had a problem. And of course, I thought if you sat in a bar, you had a problem. And, you know, he's not changed that behavior. And whether to this day, I used to think a lot about that, if he was or wasn't an alcoholic. But, overall, he's been a pretty good dad. And so I went into AA with the idea that I would become like the president of AA and save my marriage to
Yeah.
someone who loved to sit in a bar and drink.
Mm.
So it
Mm.
was just, my thinking was just crazy. Um, so I called a friend who I had grown up with, knew that he was a longtime member of AA. And, I think this always really brings me to the attraction, not promotion, of Alcoholics Anonymous, because I knew nothing about what he did in AA, but I knew he had a good life, and I knew he was a
Mm.
good guy, and I knew I didn't see him when I was sitting drinking at the bar. Um, his kids and my kids played together. His mom and my mom were great friends, so I knew that he was a really genuine good guy. And um, he did what he should have done, gave me the number to a gal in AA that men work with men, women work with women,
Right.
was, the thinking.
Right.
And that probably was a good idea at that time for me, with a vulnerable and a falling apart marriage. And
Sure.
so, I wasn't even 24 hours sober when I walked into my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. Um, I remember talking to the gal that became my first sponsor that night. Excuse me. And she said, just don't drink until we go to the meeting tomorrow. And I was a beer drinker. And my husband had a bottle of Crown Royal, and I took two big swigs of
Mm,
that Crown Royal. And, I know we can't predict that it's ever our last drink, but it wasn't even really out of rebellion. It was just this. This is the way I hated that. I hated hard booze. Not that I didn't drink it, but I just thought I'm going to remember this yuck forever
yeah.
and not do it again. So that's how I got there, and got really involved really fast, in AA, and I like to look good, and I like to be a quick study. So I read that book upside down, backwards. I could quote things, and wanted to be that person that looked good and was the smartest one there. And I thought I probably could run the place, and
Yeah.
until I learned that there's really nobody in charge of AA. So
Hmm.
um, and it was traditional AA, and
Right.
I was, I felt through my story, really starting with being an unwed mother in high school, that I had flunked out of the Catholic Church.
Right.
I had, periods of time when the kids were little, we went regularly. The kids went to the Catholic school, and I always just kind of struggled with that doctrine and dogma, but was really firmly planted in a belief in God. And
So you had a belief in God, but you felt that your the religion you grew up in pretty much cast you aside because of your pregnancy when you were in high school.
yeah, right. Yes. I remember going to confession, because that's what you were supposed to do. And, the priest, and of course, he was probably younger than I am now, but it seemed like a middle aged, old, celibate man asking me if I had sexual
Oh
sins that I
God.
wanted to confess. And but I kept brushing it all aside, and I kept, thinking that this really was the right way to go and to be. And I've struggled with that for a long, long time. But what happened when I got into AA is it became my religion.
Yeah, I
It
can relate.
really, it was a place that I prayed with people. It was a place where people helped me to be a better person.
Right.
Um,
We even have our
and
own little liturgy, don't we? We have our book and
right.
our own little language and mhm.
Yep, yep, kinda like the secret handshake and
Yeah.
everything. So I just ate that up.
Yeah.
The Catholic Church is filled with rituals and doctrine and dogma
Yep.
and rights and wrongs, and so, I just slid right into that in AA. And for a couple years, it was I needed that involvement. I needed that probably level of involvement. But then, I started getting burned out 3, 4, 5, by 5 years, I was
Oh.
on every committee. I was the head of everything.
Oh
Because that's
man,
what I wanted.
you got started in that pretty early then and how
Yes,
that service worked. Oh wow. I didn't do that
right.
till much, much later. Wow.
Yeah, I was in the area, and,
Oh my gosh.
just constantly, I was
Did you
trying to think
enjoy
of
it while you did it? Did you enjoy it?
sometimes. I mean, sometimes I did. I made some good friends, that some of which, I still enjoy seeing.
Right.
Um, but yeah, there was always, it was what I thought I had to do. It was
Right.
really just, and I sponsored a lot of women. Then I got a different sponsor. I've had a couple different sponsors. So then my second sponsor was, pretty easy going, like, one meeting a week and do a little bit here and a little bit there. And, it didn't take me long to think that I mean, she wanted to talk about other stuff. She didn't want to dissect the big book and talk about all this spiritual stuff. She wanted to talk about her dog and her husband. And
Uh-huh.
I just thought, no meat in there. I got to
Right.
this is not the way this is supposed to work. And so I found another sponsor, and she, sets the bar of AA service work just above and beyond, especially with sponsoring women. And so that's what she really encouraged me to do. And so I started, and I don't know, in AA around here, it seems like there's always enough men to go around as sponsors,
Sure.
but women are in short supply. So,
Yep.
pretty soon I have double-digit sponsees, and I'm having them at my
Wow.
house once a week, and
Oh my
we're going
gosh.
through the book, and we're having retreats, and it was just. And then I got back into church a little bit and started teaching a confirmation class, and for all the wrong reasons. I wanted them to know that God was loving and kind and accepting, and not what they were learning. And but I couldn't, it was just, yeah, it was. I did it for 4 years. I absolutely
Mm.
love those girls.
Wow.
And by the end I was just biding my time. I was not buying much of the church's teachings, but
Right.
again, I still had a very strong belief in a God,
Right.
and the God that the personal God. And but throughout that time, I have always was always fascinated with the Buddha's path,
Hmm.
and kind of use that as an adjunct to learn how to do some meditating, and um, that kind of Zen feeling. And I got into a little woo kind of stuff, healing and that. So I was all over the place. Um, so then I guess what happens is we get a global pandemic, and now I can't go to meetings, and we had moved, and so we hadn't gone to as many meetings. I met my husband in AA, and um, so we're both in the program, and
Mm-hmm.
so just distance and that. So it was kind of like churning a little bit as to how much of this do I really need to do, when I dropped a lot of those things, and missed two group conscience in a row, and and it was just okay. And
Yeah.
then the pandemic hits, and where I'm wiggling this table on her, and um and we don't have meetings. And so we start a Zoom meeting, and everyone is angry. And it just was just such an eye opening. And they wanted to have meetings, and nobody wanted to wear masks. And
Oh
oh, it
wow.
was,
Mm.
yeah. And I work as a nurse, so I had plenty of work and more to do during that time, but I had
Sure.
nothing else to do,
Oh wow.
absolutely nothing. And so um, I spent a lot of time meditating, and I'm meditating really to kind of find something, to find a message. And I started studying the science of COVID, as I needed
Mm-hmm.
to do,
Mm-hmm.
and really started to look into that, and then got interested again. And years ago, when I heard about quantum physics, I always thought that was going to prove some collective consciousness, and that science and God were going to finally come together. And I kind of found the opposite of that. I was start when I really started, getting into it. And I can't say it was completely by accident, but it wasn't really where I thought I was heading, not at
Right.
all.
Yeah.
Um, and so
Isn't
it
science interesting though? Because I had kind of a similar experience. I never grew up in a religion or anything, but I had a point where I evolved to where I realized I was an atheist. And a lot of what got me over there was science. For me, I was really
mhm,
interested in astronomy and learning about the universe and how it all started. And the story that science tells about the creation of the universe was way more interesting and plausible than anything that I'd ever heard in any religion,
mhm,
and it made me actually feel better, about my place in the universe as a human being, knowing that I'm part of it. And it still interests me. I'm never going to understand this stuff completely, but I love it. And it brings me, it kind of, if I ever want to kind of calm myself down, I'll watch a video on YouTube about the universe or something, or quantum
yeah,
mechanics. It's something I don't understand but would love to know about.
yeah.
So
And
yeah.
those could be my words exactly. And
Yeah.
yeah, and there was a it was a book I started reading about, the cosmology and the universe expanding, and I couldn't get the concept of entropy, so I kept
Hmm.
studying and reading and
Wow.
listening to podcasts. And in that book, there was a chapter about how our brains are wired, and faith and belief, and the author of the book was not promoting that as a good thing, so that was the first time I kind of saw in black and white, like
Do you
this.
remember the book? The name of the book?
It was Brian Greene's The End of Time.
Oh, okay. Okay. And he did
Yeah.
a documentary about that too, didn't he? I think.
Yeah, I've listened to a
Okay.
lot of his
Yeah, he's
things,
good.
and
Hmm.
very good, extremely brilliant. I mean, I
Yes.
the book, I think The End of Time is meant for like the lay person, and
Right.
my
Yeah,
daughter and
he's
I read
super.
it together as like a study, and yeah,
Hmm.
I just still. And isn't it amazing where I get to that point of thinking I know everything and wanting to run the world, to knowing I'm just
Yeah.
a little speck on the pale blue dot, and that's okay, and I don't know
Yeah.
hardly anything.
So did you
Um,
ever have a point where you kind of where you're because you had this belief that okay, I'm not necessarily buying into the religion that I grew up in with the Catholic Church. But I still have this fundamental idea that there's a God. Then you go down this path of studying science. And did you get to a point where you had a conflict that you had to resolve with the God of AA and where you were heading now?
yes, yes. So I don't quite remember when Ash Wednesday was last spring, but I worked in a religious facility. And so we have a pastor, and he brought around communion and ashes, and I took them. And I went in the bathroom after that and wiped the ashes off. And I thought, I
Mm.
have no business doing this. I don't believe this. I don't.
Wow.
And so that was probably one of my first aha moments. And then coincidentally, a few weeks later, we had some temporary employees through COVID that um, did some different things for us. And I was talking to this gal a little bit here and there. I really enjoyed her. And all of a sudden, one day she said to me, I'm an atheist.
Mm.
And that was like it. Like I wanted to like spend 3 days with her talking about what that was and how she got there, and what had happened. And and then in here is um not going to AA meetings. I think they were open to um, the public by then, or we were back open. But I work in a nursing home, so I was just extremely careful in my
Right.
personal life, and and then I got vaccinated. Then I still didn't want to go out.
Yep,
I
I
kept
know.
telling everybody, I said, when I'm vaccinated, we can have coffee, we can do this. And then and that was all around the same time. And you know, I went a little, well, if you'd asked my husband, I went a lot crazy. I mean, this stuff was just boiling inside of me. I had this gal to talk to, another friend, um, who was a non-believer to talk to, but I just didn't feel like I could really tell anybody exactly how it was I felt.
Right.
Um, and so as it sometimes is, I mean, I started going crazy over things that were happening in our personal life, and finally went to a doctor. I just could not. I had a little. I probably did have a sinus infection, but I mean, I went, and she walked in the room, and I just started crying, and I just blurted out, "I don't think I even believe in God anymore." And she was like, you know, a church religious person, as most people are in our area. And she's like, oh my, this is like
Oh no.
very, very serious. And and so I got an antibiotic and an antidepressant. I remember the pharmacist saying, this is really a strange combination. And that was a huge step for me. I
Yeah,
had
sure.
during my drinking, I had taken an antidepressant, and I knew, being a nurse, that you shouldn't probably drink and take that medication. So I chose drinking and quit taking it. So I struggled with that for for a long time, and so I got on the antidepressants, and then I was going to start some counseling, and lo and behold, the second session, she recommends the book. I buy the book, and the first third line of the book is to help you become the person God meant you to be.
Mm.
And so there I am again, and through this time now, I'm listening to the militant atheists, and I am just feeling like when I put these earbuds in tonight, I thought I've spent a lot of time with these earbuds and listening to podcasts and reading books, and Dawkins and Hitchens, and oh my
Yep.
gosh, when they would, and I don't want to be that way, and I know they always, to not say anything about anyone, but sometimes they really get down and scrap.
Oh, I used to love
With
it
the
when I was
yeah.
first getting involved in all of that. I would watch. I love YouTube, and so I would watch all these debates that they would have.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
like they'd debate some priest somewhere. And it was
Yes.
just I loved it. I ate it all up. But that was a
Right.
period of time when I was still learning about myself and how I felt,
Mhm.
and I don't know. It was kind of scary for me to go there, to go into atheism. I kind of went there kind of gradually,
Yeah.
even though I never had a religious thing other than AA. But AA was
Mhm.
definitely my religion, and that was, I think I know, Barb. That's what was bothering me, because when I finally came to the conclusion that I am an atheist, my first fear was that I was not going to be accepted in AA, and it turned out my home group didn't accept my atheism. They didn't. And that was a tough thing to go through,
Mhm.
but it turned out okay on the other end. But yeah, not to say that that was true with everybody, but as a
Right.
whole, no, they didn't.
Yeah. And that's not something that I've faced up to yet. I don't know if anyone in our very few people, know that I'm in this, and I had such a hard time even saying the word atheist, and it still
Yep.
bothers me a little bit.
I know. I hated to
Um,
have it connected with me. For some reason,
mhm.
because you kind of grow up in this country with this idea that atheists are bad, right?
Right.
That's just
Yeah.
the kind of, yeah.
Immoral,
Yeah.
evil,
Communists.
Yes. 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 And so in fact, when I finally did, and this has probably been less than 6 months ago, I told my husband, because I started looking for, and this is just crazy. I, in my mind, did not think that there would be anything like secular AA. I drank the Kool-Aid.
Yep,
If
I
you
did.
don't find God, you don't get sober, and you don't stay sober. Um, and it just, for as intelligent as I think I am, I just never thought that there were people that did not believe in AA.
How did you find
And
them?
so just online, I just started to, and I'm a YouTube person too. I just
Hmm.
love to listen to lots of podcasts, and so I came across, I believe his name is also John S. And he told his story, and then through that, I think I found your podcast, and then I found secular meetings, and I've gone to a few of them online. But right now, I haven't, probably for a couple months. Besides listening to podcasts,
Right.
um, been part of an actual group, and I kind of struggle with that. My sponsor, I did tell her, and I could get out the word secular. That seemed to be a little less noxious.
Right. Right.
And so I told her that I was having a bit of a struggle, and I was looking at secular meetings online, and we had a bit of a conversation about it, which she reminded me of me talking to um, new sponsees, in AA, and it's like like you really do believe in God, you just don't know it,
Oh, I
and
know.
I
Yeah.
realized how condescending that feels,
Right.
and so she, and it's the universe, or it can be the universe for you, or it can be this, or it can be that, it just isn't, it like this really isn't, shouldn't be a problem for you.
They can't use
And
their imagination that, you know what, you actually don't even need a higher power at all.
mhm, right, right. And then I went to a women's retreat, and I had a gal that I know that, well, and the whole thing, why I thought I should go when I was in this, state, because the person that puts it on is a minister.
Mm,
So it's very, very God filled retreat. But I had one friend there that I knew was a Buddhist, and a Buddhist doesn't have a God. There isn't a all powerful being.
right.
And so I'm trying to talk to her, and she's like a Buddhist with a God that prays, and I'm
Oh,
just I just I could not put this together. But it gets better as time goes on, like you said, and I certainly am nowhere near probably through this process, and maybe never will be. But it's a little bit more comfortable now, and I those those things that you were, I guess, indoctrinated isn't too strong of a word to use.
no, it's not.
As I was getting the computer and everything set up, I've done some speaking in AA, and it was always I always thought there was three P's, but I don't know. It was P and pray, and whatever comes out of your mouth doesn't matter. God will do the talking, and you're just the and yeah, so this is the first time I spoke that I didn't say a prayer, but I still calmed myself and sat for a few minutes and reflected on gratitude for my sobriety and the life that I have today. And, I didn't need a higher power to help me do that, or to share that with. So yeah, it's definitely a crazy journey, and as far as finding a spot in AA, I haven't. And then I kind of mellowed on that, but I've gone through a kind of real rebellious feelings against the indoctrination of AA, and how wrong that all is. And even some secular meetings that I went to, I thought were a little too dogmatic, and you have to work the steps, and
Right,
seems
right.
like there's the same old guy there growling about that there
Yep,
is in the traditional meetings.
right.
And so I just, and
Er,
yeah, I still have that little bit of fear that I don't. And even when I was in traditional AA, I didn't have as much fear as maybe I was told I should have, or I don't think I'm going to drink again.
no,
But I was worried about going crazy. You know, Jails,
yeah.
institutions, or death. And I thought mine would be the loony bin. I thought if
Hmm.
I didn't drink and didn't have this perfect program in AA, that I would just go batshit crazy. And you know, that has kind of happened, but not in the way that not in the way that I was told that
So
it
where are
would.
you right now with your thinking about those steps? So because you started off studying that book,
Hmm.
reading the book with other people, taking other people through it. Um, so how do you feel about those now?
I think I have come to the conclusion that it's the principles of the
Yeah.
steps.
Yeah.
And I think that there's, and not just loyalty and honesty, but a good life principle is to inventory
Yeah.
um, where you're going in life and what you did
Hmm.
today. And I think that putting some of those principles into practice is, or all of them, leads to a good life. And when my mind is clear of alcohol and some of that crazy thinking, um, then I'm able to do that. I'm able to put those principles into practice, and I feel a lot better not believing about myself. I feel the best I've ever felt about, what do you want? Do I like myself? Self love,
Right.
whatever, term. But, I feel just okay.
That's
And
a good place to be.
yeah, and that's just been the most, if you will, miraculous feeling.
Yeah, sure.
Um, just to know that I have faults, to know that I have shortcomings. Um, but I also do a lot of good things in a day, and I still reach out and help people. And I don't do it through AA, but certainly in my close friends and most of my coworkers, know that I'm a recovered alcoholic. And there's sometimes are questions that are asked to me, or I'm asked to talk to people. I have no idea what I would do if someone asked me to sponsor them at this point.
I know. Yeah.
That's the thing, is that I don't really know, because I had such a rigid structure
I
of
know.
how I
Same
went
here.
through that.
Oh God, same here. I did it the way my people sponsored me, and you take them through the
Mhm.
book. The group that I went to, you would read one chapter. You'd read it every single day for 30 days, is what they would have me do. And if I missed a day, I was supposed to start all over again. It was just so stupid. So it got me to the point where I'd have to lie that, oh no, I read it, I read it, I read it, because at the beginning I was really honest about it. I could never get through the damn thing. So yeah, that was what we had to do, and then we had to underline it, highlight it, talk about it, try to relate our stories to it. It was all about that book and knowing the book. It just, I tell you, for me, it took a long time to grow out of that. And
Mhm.
I found it interesting when you were talking about where you're at today. You're not going to meetings. You really haven't found your place in AA, I think is how you put it.
Right.
Is that what? Yeah, I think I'm there too, actually, right now.
Mhm.
And I'm coming to this idea that I don't have to be a member of AA. I can
Mhm.
just go to AA meetings if I want to.
Mhm.
And that's kind of a nice freedom. I don't have to belong to it. I can just go to a meeting once in a while if I choose to. And that's what I kind of do now. And I said that for the first time at a meeting where I was speaking. I need to listen to that recording sometime. They recorded it. And people just didn't quite understand that. These were secular people. That idea is kind of troubling, I think, to some people, and it would have been troubling to me, I guess, because AA was so important. And I don't know, it's weird, Barb, because it's been most of my life I've been involved in it. So I'm not going to
Mhm.
say that I'm not going to continue on. I mean, most of the people I know are in AA and everything, but I guess it's not the cornerstone of my recovery,
Mhm.
because I know there are other things I can do too, and other things that I do,
Mhm.
you know, and yeah, I just throw that out there.
Yeah, and that's kind of funny. I kind of had that thought too, because you get this all or none thinking. And
Yeah.
at one point I actually wondered if the appropriate thing to do would be to, like, go to a group conscience and resign. I seriously,
Yeah. Yeah.
like I said, I had no one at that point to really talk to, and I about it. And I just thought, is that the right thing to do? And and I was always, so I think that's feeling better about myself, is getting over that, laying awake at night, saying your prayers. What is God's will for me? What is the next right thing to do? What is if you're in a conflicting situation and you need to be here and need to be there, and, you know, do I go to my mother's? Do I go to the AA meeting? Do I keep the just go crazy over that? And usually AA won out.
Mm.
And my youngest son and my mother, I have, um, they were probably the most shortchanged by my over involvement,
Yeah.
um, in
Isn't that
AA.
interesting?
Yeah, and they each, around the same time, which was probably, oh, I want to say 5 years ago. My son was 16 in high school and kind of struggling a little bit, and we had a his dad and I and sat down with him and had a talk, and that was one of the things he talked about, is how he's like, if that's what you got to do, mom, that's what you got to do. But,
Uh,
and so it's just kind of ironic, because you feel like you're kind of in this cycle of, I'm making amends because I wasn't present and I was drinking, and now I'm making these living amends because I wasn't present because I was in AA.
yeah.
Um, And
Yeah.
so, yeah, the things that, and, and I was, um, my husband, is good with just going to a meeting or two a week and just kind of leaving it at that now. But and probably it would have been for a long time, but I was always the one, and people were not happy. Some people when we got together in AA, the AA couple, and I'm just kind of that bullheaded, like I will show them.
Yeah.
Someone made a comment to me, "Oh, pretty soon you'll be home on the couch together, not in AA where you're supposed to be." And
Ah,
so I just, I'm like, I'm not going to change a dang thing, and he just gonna
right.
have to come along for the ride. And we struggled, with that and other things because of being in recovery, both of us. But
Mhm.
yeah, we've been together 10 years, and yeah, we built a really great life together. And I just, this has bothered me for, even before the deconversion was really apparent. But you know we have all the everything that we have because of God. And then if anything bad happens, it's because of us and
Right,
our,
right. Yeah.
defective, I guess, the character
Yeah.
defects. I guess the program doesn't use the word sinful as much as religion did. But at some point I'm like, I worked damn hard to get to where I'm at, in AA and my job and my and relationships. I'm like,
Yeah.
am I just being a selfish person saying I don't want God to have all this credit,
Mhm.
And so that, and I always felt that that was such a selfish thought to have, because all the glory goes to God, and
Right. Yeah.
and yeah.
Yeah. At my old home group that I was raised in, basically, the concept of humility was so super important.
Hmm.
And I mean, I'm not saying that there's something wrong with humility, that there's a place for it in our lives, and but it was stressed a little too much, almost to my detriment, because as I was getting better, I was achieving things, and I was
Hmm.
feeling proud about the things I was
Yes.
achieving, and I wanted to talk about it, and I felt like I couldn't, like being proud of something that I did was wrong, and telling someone about it was bragging,
Yes.
and I still kind of struggle with that, because this was a 25-year experience I had with humility being drilled into me. I didn't grow up with people telling me I needed to be humble. I think I was already kind of beaten down in the ground anyway.
Hmm.
But in AA, that humility thing was just pushed in me a little bit too much, I think, to where, yeah, it's a problem. But anyway, enough of that.
Yeah.
We
Well,
can there's a recovery period from that.
yeah.
There's a recovery
Yeah.
period from all that dogmatic stuff that we had to
Yeah.
deal with.
And I think, yeah, I remember being at a meeting one night and they talked about gratitude, and it was people and our program and just on, and I had some things in my life, material things some trips I'd gotten to take, and I talked about that that sometimes what we get are things, and those
Right.
things enhance our, a trip with my mother,
Right.
and it was just dead silence. Like, you just got that feeling that was, and as I thought about it later, no other person mentioned my new home or
Right.
having a nice vehicle that I can get
And
to
you
work
felt good
in.
about it. You probably felt good about it.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. It's I know it's something
Yeah.
else.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, but
relate.
I think that, I probably am in that deprogramming
Yeah.
stage of a lot of that, and it does, creep back in. But once I finally let go of that belief in some judging higher entity that grants and withholds at their discretion what I do and what I don't do, um, I found a lot. I've been confused and struggling, but in such a different way because,
Yeah.
I have a peace and contentment and that I think like you said, knowing what your place is in all of this nature and stars and things that I've loved forever. It just I just yeah, the awe and the wonder is greater than it ever was um, when I was religious or believing, and my zest for life and putting meaning into my own life and finding my own purpose in life, knowing that this is probably the only shot that we have, that there isn't a eternal something that we're working
Right.
for beyond this. If this is it, then the it's got to be good. I gotta make it good. That's my feeling, that
Yeah.
every day is a day that I can, if I'm going to have any kind of memory or eternal life, so to speak, it's going to be in maybe the good things that I've done for other people. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. That's a nice way
yeah.
to think about it. Well,
Mhm.
thank you for sharing your story with us. I relate to a lot of it. It sounds like you're in a good place right now, coming to peace with where you're at in your own recovery. I think it's fantastic what you're doing for yourself, Barb, and I look forward
Thank
to
you.
hearing from you as you go on to see how you evolve.
Yes.
It's because it's really interesting. When you start looking back, it's like, wow, I used to say and believe that, and now look at,
Mhm.
it's kind of
Mhm.
wild. So,
And it helps me not to be too, out there, because what I believe today might change again in
right,
many years. So it's helped me if that's maybe ability or just not, being on a soapbox and getting everybody on
right,
the bandwagon. So,
right.
and I want to thank
Well,
you because finding your podcast was just a huge um, comfort for me, and to hear and know that there's people out there that think and are going through what I'm going through was, saved my sanity a lot of nights with my earbuds in listening. So
well, thank you for saying that. It's always great to hear that. Thank you very much for that. I'm
you're
trying to find.
welcome.
I changed my outro music a little bit, so I'm going to try to find something to play us out on. But we'll try this and see how it sounds. Oh, there it was. How about that? So, that's another episode of Beyond Belief Sobriety. Thank you for listening. And those of you on YouTube, thanks for watching. If you would like to support this podcast, there's a couple ways you can do that. You can go, well, here on YouTube. Episode of you can go to YouTube right here and become a member of our YouTube channel. You can go to our website, beyondbeliefsobriety.com, and click on the donate button or the buy us a cup of coffee button. You can go to patreon.com/beyondbelief and become a patron. And any support is appreciated. So thank you for that. And thank you, Barb. It's been a great conversation. It's a good way to spend a Thursday night. And thank you. I
It
appreciate
is.
it.
Thank you.
Take care.